When I was preparing for Andrew and for being on the show, I really tried to get in touch with my Jewish history. I am Jewish, and my dad is from Israel, and I really just spent a lot of time looking into what it would be like to live 2,000 years ago in ancient Judea. Under Roman rule, what was life like back then? What would it be like to be Jewish in that time? And so to me, that was a really important part of the story. And then really when it comes to Andrew, there's not much in terms of personality-wise or something written in the gospel. And so then it was really diving into the scripts as written and finding out who is this guy? What makes him tick? What are his strengths, his weaknesses? How do I relate to him? And then really just trying to use my imagination and bridge that divide between me and Andrew. And a lot of the things that I do is I spend a lot of the time daydreaming at home. I literally will sit in my room alone. No one can be around. And I put on classical music, and I just let my mind and imagination wander. And I think, I'll take a moment from the script, like for instance, in the first season, the miracle of the fish. And I just go through that entire circumstance about not catching any fish, about to lose our boat, our livelihood, our lives are at stake, and thinking, what would it be like that whole night fishing, not catching anything? And then Jesus shows up, who I have just seen, and the miracle happens. And I just really, I get kind of goosebumps thinking about it, but I really just try to make that alive for myself so that when it happens in the moment, it's there for us, and then we can creatively play.
For me, I was Lilith when I auditioned for the role. I was in a state of depression. I was an alcoholic. I was broke and I was in a state of despair. And I was feeling so similar to her. When I was about to quit acting, I told my agent to stop submitting me because I was not successful, and I just felt like all the signs were pointing to no, that I need to quit auditioning, quit acting. This is a dead end for me. And it was my dream since I was a kid, so it was an extra sad thing to deal with. But he submitted me to this role anyway, and I auditioned for it. And when I read the scripts for the audition, I was overwhelmed by how much I related to her. It felt like she was written for me. This portrayal of her, this version of her that the writers did. And I was actually so surprised by how modern it was, of this woman that is living on her own and is sort of self-medicating. And at first I didn't know what type of project this was going to be. I heard from other people that were auditioning that it was this very modern thing. It was the retelling of Jesus' story. And I realized no, this is pretty true to the Gospels. This is taking stories from the Gospels and just fleshing them out and bringing them to life and making plausible scenarios so that we can relate to them. And the way the writers did that for Mary was just hit me in my core. And so it was very easy to delve into that portion of it for season 1, for the first 4 episodes of playing Lilith. In a very big way, it was very cathartic for me to let go of a lot of emotions of shame and pain and guilt and fear and anxiety, just all of this stuff that had been building up. And then, of course, she meets Jesus and everything changes, and it felt like an opportunity for me to even just be this is actually a new start. This is actually a fresh beginning. Fresh start, new beginning. For me to have this sort of new lease on life, this new joy, to be alive, to stay alive, and get to experience all of this. And just since then, it's just been the most amazing process and experience to work with some of the most amazing people and talented actors, and it is literally a dream come true, like my dream as a child come true. All of them. They're challenging scenes for actors. Like they require, so much of it requires so much from us. There's a lot of emotional sort of displays and a lot of crying and a lot of scenes for Mary that, you know, doing it for an audition is easy. You can do it once, but like doing it to film, it takes 10 to 20 sometimes takes, where you just have to like stay in that state and keep doing it and maintain a newness and a realness each time. So the whole process is actually really challenging.
We, in season 2, one of the most challenging scenes that I think we did for this season was the very end of the season because it was freezing. I mean, I
thought I was dying.
And we're in our, you know, like potato sacks.
And sandals.
So not very warming clothes. Yeah. And we were out there. And remember, you were like...
I think I was like, my body was like, all right, we're out.
Yeah, we were worried about you. And we would hide and try to get warm. And then you got to drop the coats. And then they roll. And it was, you know...
I don't remember much of it because
yeah, it was so hard, and the thing is you're shaking, so you're shaking from the cold, and then they're like, and action, and you're like this, you know, and then you do the scene, and you're totally fine, and they're cut, and you're like, and you're like, like trying to get. It was so hard to, and then also like when you're doing it, you don't want your breath to just be, you know, spewing out the cold, and so you just be like talking, you know, like everything about it was you're hiding how cold you were. Yeah. That's the very end. So when people watch the end of the second season, they will know in that final episode we were freezing.
We've had a lot of like, I don't know. And then it's also really hot in Texas summer. So like we have these extreme
season
weather
3,
things. Yeah.
Even harder. But I wanted to keep it to season 2. Season 3 was even harder.
I think for me, Mary goes through so much and has such like extreme experiences. She in season 1 we see her in such a state of despair, and in season 2 we see her there again. And so we know that like this is a place that is familiar to her, and that she's constantly trying to like stay out of. And then we also see these extreme highs of pure joy and elation when she sees Jesus' miracles, and she's such a fully fleshed out person with so many different emotions and experiences that's really rare to see, I think, in media. Like,
I think when it comes to Andrew, especially in the second season, something that I've loved exploring is that we see in season 1 that I find the Messiah and I say to Simon, you know, the Romans don't matter. Nothing matters. If the Messiah is here, anything is possible. And you see this real unburdening of stress and anxiety and almost like, you know, elation, thinking like, well, everything's fine. And in season 2, we realize that it's not that easy. That just because you're following Jesus' teaching and that you have become a disciple and you're in this group, it's not that easy, and bad things start happening to those around the group. And you see in the second season, Andrew realizes that the path is so hard and challenging to walk. In America, we call it a come to Jesus moment, but there's a real there's a lot of anxiety that comes up. There's a lot of fear. A lot of the weaknesses of Andrew start to come out, and it affects other people in the group. And that to me was a really important thing to explore in this season, to show that it doesn't just change like that, and it's not that easy.
Yeah, I think especially in season 2, so we've seen Mary in her state of depression and her despair, and she's suicidal, and then she meets Jesus and she's redeemed. It's that same sort of thing of like, okay, well now everything's going to be great, now everything's going to be easy. And in season 2, we see that challenged a little bit, where she is triggered by old traumas and starts feeling bad again, and all of her past starts creeping back in, and she gets scared and runs away, like literally leaves the group and returns to her old vices. And for her, it's this way to like comfort her, or just like it's familiar. But, you know, she's brought back, of course, to the group. And when she speaks with Jesus and admits that she doesn't think she can live up to this. She doesn't think she can live up to what she thinks is expected of her. And Jesus, of course, says, you don't have to be perfect. I just want your heart. God just wants your heart. And it's this like lovely thing to just like, for me as an actor, to keep and hold on to, because that's a message I think we all need to hear always, is that like, you're human, you're going to make mistakes. You can't be perfect. You're not perfect. That doesn't mean that you're not loved, you know, and that you don't deserve love. And so I think into season 3 even, she's on this journey of like, she knows that Jesus has forgiven her, but she hasn't necessarily forgiven herself. And so there's these themes of shame and guilt in the past that she's really having to let go of and having to shed in order to become the woman that we know she becomes. The funniest? It's every day on set with you guys. Whenever the disciples are around, like, I know it's going to be a funny day. Some of you guys are like, will cry laughing.
Yes, we definitely, sometimes we'll just be singing songs. You know, like we had we have these bugs in Texas that will like attack your legs and ankles, and we are wearing sandals. There is no protection from these bugs, okay? And so we like douse ourselves in sulfur and stuff to try to keep them away. And then this one time, we just started singing the bug song. We were like chanting and basically like praying the bugs away, you know, singing. And we each took turns taking the sock to slap the sulfur on our legs. One time during season 2, episode 3, we're all sitting around a campfire, and it would get very cold at night sometimes, and we would always try to hide like our fluffy sandals if we could put like these nice fluffy shoes on. But then every once in a while there'd be like, we see that in frame, like you can't wear your fluffy shoes, you have to put your sandals back on. And so we'd like always make fun of who had to. We'd be like, oh, too bad, look like you gotta put your sandals back on. And then you like get your frozen sandals back on your feet while we'd just be there nice and comfy in our fluffy shoes. And
when you're not on camera.
Yeah, exactly, when you're not the one on camera. And then of course at 2 a.m, they're like, Noah, now we see your feet. And you're like, oh no.
Was that the same night that you and Shahar had to douse yourselves in water and
Yes.
It was absolutely freezing?
We did have to douse ourselves in water. Shahar makes the decision to literally pour it over his face. And I was like, yeah, mine's gonna touch some fingers instead. Like, I'm gonna do it really. Yeah, but we always have just a bunch of fun on set.
I mean, watch an episode. Just watch an episode. It's, I think it has something for everyone, no matter what your background is in your faith tradition or no faith tradition, any political background. Like, I think it speaks to, there's a universal message in it. And I think it can speak to anyone because there's so many different types of characters that we can relate to. And they're very human and they're very messy and they make mistakes and they're not the perfect saints that people think they are. We meet them before they meet Jesus. So it's like us. They're just like us. It's relatable.
There's a reason why the show really took off in 2020 during the pandemic, and it's because when everyone was confused about what was happening in the world, when everyone was feeling isolated and alone, they found this show, and it did give people hope. It gave them a sense of belonging. It gave them a story to binge Jesus, as we say. It really, I think people really responded to the messages of the show and the characters. We always hear from people that connect with, certain characters in the show, and there really is someone for everyone.
I also think people hear like, oh, it's a Jesus story, and people tend to roll their eyes at first. Of like, I've seen Christian media or faith-based media, and they're not expecting the quality of show that this is, which is like a historical drama as well.
As authentic as possible to the time period and these people.
So it's good art as well as like a good message. I mean, 100%. I think my life before this show was almost unrecognizable. I look back at who I was then, and that is almost unrecognizable to me today. It has changed me in a lot of ways that are sort of unexpected. It's the character, but it's also the experience of working with like wonderful, kind actors, and the response from fans of like these really loving messages, and knowing that there's this community that cares about us and cares about the show, and that we care about. Like, it's opened up my heart and kind of opened up the world to me in a way that I wasn't expecting to ever happen.
I was in a really, dark, sort of low place before the show. I just felt like I wasn't nothing was being asked of me as an actor. I was, it's one thing to come onto a show and be like, hey, can I get you some water? Cool, great. And like, that's the only thing you do on the show. And then with The Chosen, like, so much is required of us in the best way possible. We try to bring everything we have to this show. And that to me has completely changed my life, because it allows me to fulfill my life's purpose. And what better company to do that with than The Chosen?
Thank you.
Thank you.